Great. Holy God in heaven, we thank you for the Sabbath. We want to thank you for the opportunity that thou hast granted us to gather here. And also to remember our friends who have not managed to come here for one reason or another. Maybe with them. Be your members of both man and man, wherever they are gathered. May you give us courage of thoughts. And we thank you for how you led this moment, something like this fun. May you help us to have confidence in you as we proceed with the discussion. May you give us clarity of thought that we may lead us from cause to effect, and where we may have difficult understanding, may we be patient and to wait for your clarity. In Jesus' name we pray, trusting and believing. Uh, Thank you, Morgan, for the studies. I think when he was taking us through whatever he had prepared for us, the word consciousness, caught my attention, and I was wondering uh, what drives us to, to be conscious and where we live, the perception, the perspective we have when we sit here, and it is really a good thought, especially when I was considering the writers of the Bible, because one way or another, they were driven by their conscience, whatever they were seeing, how they approach, different subject. For example, in the gospel, I think they were conscious of different things. Others could omit, others could just, add. And I think part of the studies will be influenced by this thing called consciousness. A couple of weeks ago, I had a privilege to dive into some of the Ellen White quotation, and I emerged with a thought that I would like to share with us this summer. And depending on the circumstance we are living in as a people, which is at the end of the world, there are some thoughts that they find their fulfillment in our time. So I would like us to go to the book Desire of Ages, chapter 69. That's where we actually borrow a concept. Desire of Ages, that is page 628. Desire of Ages, page 628, paragraph 1. If you look at that chapter, it's called On the Mount of Olives, and it has its parallel or counterpart chapter, the book Great Controversy. I think we'll read page 22 again, just confirm. Page 22, paragraph 1. So once you get to these two chapters, you definitely know what we are going to discuss this moment, right? So let's read Desire of Ages, page 628, paragraph 1. It says, Christ's words had been spoken in the hearing of a large number of people, but when he was alone, Peter, John, James, and Andrew came to him as he sat upon the Mount of Olives. Tell us, they said, when shall these things be, and what shall be the signs of thy coming and of the end of the world? Jesus did not answer his disciples by taking up separately the destruction of Jerusalem and the great day of his coming. He mingled the description of these two events. Had he opened to his disciples future events as he beheld them, they would have been unable to endure the sight. In mercy to them, he blended the description of the two great crises, leaving the disciples to study out the meaning for themselves. When he referred to the destruction of Jerusalem, his prophetic words reached beyond the event of the final conflagration in that day when the Lord shall arise out of his place to punish the world for their impunity, when the earth shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain. This entire discourse was given not for the disciples only, but for those who should be in the last scene of this happy history. So if you just look at the chapter 69 of the great of the Desire of Ages, uh, she will tell us that this chapter is based on Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, and Luke chapter 21. So you can see one disciple of the gospel is omitted, right? So it's not there. We have Matthew, Mark, and Luke, so we don't have John. I don't know whether John has a description of the destruction of Jerusalem. We have a reference for John. Yes, can we have a description for John? Okay. We have John describing the destruction of Jerusalem. There is in book. Right. Does John give us a description of the destruction of Jerusalem? Yeah? Can you confirm? I saw it just in a very glimpse. So in the Desire of Ages, one thing that shouts out from this paragraph is that she says the destruction, the prediction for the destruction of Jerusalem was given to a large number of people, but only Peter, John, James, and Andrew came to him to inquire of what Christ was saying. And she's going to tell us that Christ gave a twofold prediction. First, the destruction of Jerusalem, and also at the same time, the destruction of the world. So that prediction was not just meant for them alone, but unto us who are living the last days. So yeah, again, great prophecy. So if you look at great prophecy, at least gives an in-depth narrative of the destruction of Jerusalem. So in Great Controversy 22, paragraph 1 says, Christ saw in Jerusalem a symbol of the world hardened in unbelief and rebellion, and hastening on to meet the retributive judgment of God. So we're just going to see the destruction of Jerusalem and how it affects us, especially this moment we're living in. So if you're to have a reform line, for example, so this is so let's say, for example, let's take this one to be the history of ancient Israel, and then this is the history to be what? Modern Israel. So we'll have here the history of Moses, and then this one is what? John. Then here we have the Millerite. Then we have here the 144. But we are going to focus in this one, John and us here. So, Kodo, when you consider the formula of John, where are we standing in history, in their life? Just compare, contrast this one, and try to put yourself in that formula. In which dispensation are we in?
Currently, we refer to that.
For John. For John begins from 4 BC to 100 AD. So where are we in that structure? Between where and when? Okay. Any other person? Esther?
I think between starting from Jerusalem and Patmos.
What? Where are we right now?
Between the destruction of Jerusalem and Patmos.
Patmos. So where do you mark Patmos? John was writing Revelation was in Patmos.
Mhm.
So where do you mark? So you're saying we are here, 70 AD. And where?
Patmos.
So Patmos, which year are we?
100.
100? So Esther is an individual, you are here. Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right, so what can you call this? Yeah. So this one is COP. Sorry. Then this one? Second coming. Is it your answer right?
We are 470.
You are what? Oh. So I'll still stick with you. So you can repeat yourself now. So when do you think we are?
470.
470. So we can put 70 here. Have something like this. So this is a called cross occupation still, right? And then you are here. So where do what we call this? Yes?
66.
So let's call this one a dispensation. Dispensation, okay? So which one are we 34. So this 34 AD, and then this one called what? 9?
So
Let's call it Sunday. So here. Okay. So it's in here. So this is the line for John the Revelator in the history of success. So this is where we can put ourselves into, right? So when you come here, we can parallel this dispensation to where we are now. Is that okay? So we have something like this one. So which one marks this? You should forget get your own. 2024. Okay. Then this one. You don't know. So here. So based on Christ's testimony, before the disciple even came to this history, Christ had already given a prediction of this way 70 AD, which we call the destruction of Jerusalem. And if we compare and contrast our history, this destruction also has a significant way in our waymark. So we also need to figure out what it really tells us. Is that okay? So we can have, so for example, we have already developed this idea of what? Of knowledge and formalization. As of now, I'm not aware, or I'm not sure if anyone of us is aware of the limits of knowledge. So, based on this quotation, if you are reading the history of the 144, Christ mingles two events and said, as he predicted the fall of Jerusalem, it was a symbol of what? Of the one. The one was in which condition? Saying blindness. You want to figure out what brings the destruction of Jerusalem. So we know it's Christ who gave what? That prediction. So if you're going to have this structure, So it's Christ who gave this prediction, and we're going to have the formula of Christ. Just write it here. So this is the formula of Christ. So Sabina, do you mind giving us the reformer of Christ? So he's born 4 BC. Then we have another woman.
Are you saying the line of Christ under the formula? Is it the formula including the disciples or the line?
That's Christ.
The line of Christ.
Yes, a priest.
27.
So we have 27. Christ is born 4 BC, and then he's baptized 27 AD. Is that okay? Then what's the event that follows?
First it in Christ.
So after his baptism, he goes into the wilderness for what? To go to pray, right? For 40 days. So where do we mark the 40 days?
When the angels came.
So we can mark here 40 days. So after 40 days, what happens? Yeah? What happens after 40 days, John? Was Christ hungry?
Yes, we fasted.
He fasted 40 days. Okay. So after 40 days, where does Christ go? So here we mark the expiration of the 40 days. What happens again? Where does he go?
The wedding.
The wedding at Cana. So here we have the wedding. Then what happens?
Fasted and cleansing.
Fast and cleansing. This which way mark is given? Fast and cleansing took place in 21st, 28 AD. This is the first temple cleansing. So if we have first temple cleansing, what it tells us is that we have what? Second temple cleansing, right? So when did the first temple cleansing took place?
You see the date.
28. What I was thinking is in which event did the first temple cleansing take place or took place? How many Passovers we had before Christ was crucified? How many Passovers?
When are we counting from?
Yeah.
We're counting from when?
I'm just asking a general question. How many Passovers did Christ have?
Or in his lifetime?
Yeah, in this lifetime.
14.
From after baptism. Baptism.
Yeah, 5.
So the first temple cleansing was the first Passover. Yeah. Okay. Then just simplify it. So this way mark here in our time symbolize what? Can put it to be 9/11, right? Is that okay?
Yes.
It can be 9/11 or which way mark? Depending on the context, 2019. Is that okay? Can be 2019 baptism. Because from 1989 to 2019 is 30 years. And then these 40 years. So I'm going to pick 2019. And then this way mark from 40 days, what do we have? If you're going to pick 2019. So Christ is baptized, there's no bread. After 40 years, there is bread, right? So which way mark in our line we usually mark like we have bread? We begin to have doctrine. May
2020.
2020, May, the date of George Floyd, when was it? May 2020. So this one, can just put it May 2020. Then the wedding coming, which way mark is that? marriage, which will mark marriage. The way back to symbolize marriage in our life. August
2021.
August 15, 2021. Then the first time of cleansing will be marked. Just it's a period of 2021. Now, if you consider Christ's ministry, his ministry was divided into how many parts? Into 4, right? So this way mark from 27 AD up to the time we are having the first temple cleansing, we call it what? Christ early ministry. So Christ early ministry. So I want just to transport that information to here into 4. This 1, 2, 3, then 4. So I'm going to begin in 27 AD. AD. Then we're going to have 28 AD. Then we're going to have 29 AD. We're going to have 30. Then we're going to have 31. So Seko, what happened in 31 AD? Crucifixion of Christ. Yes, the crucifixion of Christ. So we have said from 27 AD, this when was Christ baptized? 27 AD. And because this is 1 year, from year to year, that's 1 year, right? Then 2 years, 3 years, then 4 years. So from 27 AD to 31 AD, how many years are those? I want you to check the model of the 70 weeks. This is 1 week. From 27 AD is 1 week. Is that true? 1 week up to 34, right? From 27 to 34 is how many weeks? 1 week. So in the middle of the week, the Messiah shall be done what? Shall be cut off, right? So from 27 to 31 AD, how many years are those? 3.5, right? So from 27 AD at the time of the birth of Christ up to 28 AD, can it be 1 year? It has to be half, right? So how do we count year to year? From spring to spring, right? From spring to spring, that is 1 year. So when was Christ baptized? At around autumn, right? So he was baptized at autumn. So from 27 AD to 28 is half a year, right? So that we are going to have 1, 2, 3. So you add the 3.5 years up to his crucifixion. Now we have said from 27 AD to 28 is what we call what? Christ early ministry. So here, let's say it's Christ. This just say early ministry. And then from 28 to 29, we have said this is what? First temple cleansing. You can get this one from the book of John chapter is it 2 or 5? John chapter 2. So we have the first temple cleansing. And when did the first temple cleansing took place? At the first Passover. So we're going to have 28 AD is the first Passover, 29 AD is the second Passover, 38 AD is the period of the third Passover, and then this one is the fourth Passover. So we have Christ's early ministry from 27 to 28. From 28 to 29, which ministry is that? Christ is going to shift his ministry. Judean? No, this should be Judean ministry. Galilee's this one. Yeah, such big kind statement. Yeah, remember something. So this one is Galilean ministry. Galilean ministry. So from 29 to 30, which ministry is that?
It is.
So earlier, let me confirm. Yes, yeah, it is Judean.
Yes.
Yeah. Judean ministry. Okay, Sabina. So Sabina, which means is this one?
The one that you are right.
Galilean. How do you write Galilean? Galilean ministry. And then this is the second Passover. Passover. This one is the third one. Then this one is the fourth. So 29 AD, based on the book Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing, page 2, paragraph 1. And then what will tell us, this was the last time Jesus attended what? The national festival, right? So 29 AD, he never attended the national festival because the leadership had done what? Rejected his ministry. By the time we come to 30 again, the people, now the general mass, and followed what the leadership was saying and rejected Christ. So from that AD, things were really worse for Christ. And Christ began his early retirement from his ministry in which period, in which area? Perean. This now we call the Perean ministry. So this is spring. From spring. No, this is not spring, this is autumn. The spring, then on spring, spring. So in the period of the Perean ministry, this is where Christ gave his prediction for what? For the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem. Because at this period, the people were no longer even listening to what Christ was saying. He was really having a great controversy, and Christ began his retirement from the people. And now he was going to give a judgment that's going to come upon what? Jerusalem in 70 AD. Now, if we compare and contrast, for example, this one, that 4 AD, Esther, what happened at 4 AD? The stoning of Stephen, and then the gospel was initiated to which group? The Gentiles, right? Now, because from 31 AD to 34, the message was again, there was a just mercy was extended to the Jews leadership. Is that okay? But when it comes to 34 AD, we already see the acceptance. And the stoning of Stephen, the message now went to who? The Gentiles. So the Jews leadership as a whole was null and void. Is that okay? So can you see a description of the same thing at the Sunday no way back? The Jews as an institution was functionless. So they were just waiting for distribution. What about 2024, based on different models? Who is the Jews church here? Adventism, right? So what happened to Adventism in 2024? Based on the model of Acts 27. Acts 27 says what happens here in 2024. Shipwreck, right? So the shipwreck here. And 34 AD marks the end of which time period? 490. Is that okay? 490. And what does 490 represent? Yes? probationary period. So this probationary period, it ended, the Jews, leadership. So if that is the case, we have to see the same ingredient here, that we have to see a shipwreck, that Advent's leadership is no longer viable, to contain the true or other pureness of the gospel. And it's this movement that takes what? That leadership. Now, if the Jews' leadership won't hold them together here, because this way McKnight is going to be much complex, because here we are dealing with how many institutions? Just one, the Jews' church. But when you come here, we bring different institutions. The Adventists and what? That have shipwreck here. United States. So you see the complexity there. So when you tackle in 2024, we are going to bring different narratives. And here, based on many models, we are going to have to discuss the one. Okay? Because from 2024 to close of probation, what are you discussing? The third entity is going to be conquered by the king of the north, and that is what? Egypt, the one. So this destruction of Jerusalem that we are speaking about here is what Christ is saying, that the world is also going to do what? To be destroyed at the close of probation. Because there is a sin done here where we have the cup is full. And if the cup is full at 2024, they are waiting what? Judgment. Same to Jerusalem. They have been warning here, but they did not do what? Change. So if they don't change, what's going to happen here is a judgment. It's the same thing before we come to 2024, for example. We have 1989, and then we have 2024. And here we mark the rise of what? 7 kingdom. But by God's providence, God will be initiating a process to bring this kingdom back. And is going to bring a president, with the president that is going to offset unilateralism. Yes? There's a president initiated here that is going to offset this kind of kingdom. Obama. So Obama was to bring a recess of the seventh kingdom. But many people derided this administration. And later on, they chose who? Donald Trump. So, and that's why, as a movement right now, we are discussing the issue about, Revelation 17. So this was just by the way. So what I'm saying, based on the quotation, Great Controversy 22, paragraph 1, Christ gives a description of destruction of Jerusalem, and at the same time, it pictures the end of the world, where we're going to have the destruction of what? Of the world. So if you want to see the certainty of this two-way mark, you have to witness what is happening here. The shipwreck, rejection, and then a punishment. So one thing that stands out, before the destruction of Jerusalem, there was an increase of knowledge in regard to that event. So we are going to put two-way mark here. So what is this way mark, Esther? This way mark. Do you know this one? This one, eh? Good. Do you agree with Esther? Okay. So this one 66 AD. And you know the event? Okay. So, and this one is what? Sabina, which way mark is this one? 63? Okay. We also explain to us why you think this way mark. So remember, before the destruction of Jerusalem, of course, these events were predicted before. But before it happened, there has to be an increase of knowledge with that event later, because it seems like people have already forgotten what is happening. And the blindness that the Jews were is that God was still with them, was still using them. And that's why they were having fights with Paul. They were not recognizing, the authority of Paul as a preacher, and even the disciples. They were just like, let us continue with what? Jerusalem. Let us continue go to Jerusalem, continuing with the sacrificial, offering, etc. And Paul had a difficult moment, especially to the Christian Jews, because they were entangled in two positions. Are we to listen to the Jews' leadership? Are we to listen to Paul? So it was really a difficult moment for the disciples. So they had to explain what is happening. And one of the books that Paul is going to explain is the book of Hebrews. If you look at the book of Hebrews, it discusses how many temples or how many sanctuaries. 2 sanctuaries, the old and the new. And what is the old sanctuary? The Mosaic sanctuary. And what is the new sanctuary? The heavenly sanctuary. So Paul was having, task to explain to them that yes, we have 2 models, and people should not pride themselves that let us go back to the temple in Jerusalem where they continue with the offering of lamb. He's telling them we now have a new priesthood based on the order of who? Melchizedek. That we have Christ in heaven now. That is the new high priest. Let us not continue in following the sanctuary in Jerusalem, because in few years to come, that sanctuary is going to be done what? To be destroyed. And that was the purpose of the book of Hebrew. And that book of Hebrew was written in this dispensation. Now, we have the gospel, the 4 gospels. When you go to the 4 gospels, when was the gospel written? For example, the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. When were they written? When were they coded? Nick. When were those written? You don't know? Anyone, any person with that name? When was the gospel written? Yes, Brian. What? In between 34. So 34 is here. And then we have in between 34 and 70 AD. So that's why you think the gospel were written. Okay. So, but based on the recent presentation, especially in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, it tells them of the judgment that is coming if they continue, priding themselves over the temple in Jerusalem. They were to direct their mind in the heavenly sanctuary, because this temple was going to be destroyed. Esther, you gave us 66. What event happened 66 AD? Sinking by Cestius. So what event was happening in that temple? There was an event in 66 AD, the Jews event. They will just continue those events of the annual sanctuary. There was a feast. Which feast was that? Does anyone know the feast of the tabernacle? What was it about? What is the feast of tabernacle in the time of Moses? Yes. So the Jews, okay, we just confirmed that in 66 AD, there was a feast in the temple of Jerusalem, the feast of the tabernacle, and the people were gathering there as usual. But unexpectedly, Cestius, he came and he surrounded what? That temple. And people was like, okay, they're beginning to have like, this is something that Christ was doing. Why are these Romans here? And when they came there providentially, they just planted their flag and retreat. They were pushed back. And that sign was to warn them of the judgment that was coming. So this is the event that was happening here. So if this is the formalization of that event, that indeed the Romans have come and have retreated for God's mercy, what are they supposed to do throughout 66 AD to 70, in between this period? What were they supposed to do? To flee. And did they flee? Some, the Christian. If you read this chapter, they fled. So from 66 AD, people began to, to see what was happening. So 63, or let's say in the 60s, what was happening? Who gave us this remark? Sabina, what happened 63? According to your knowledge.
Mm, we have according to Ellen White,
Yes.
she will the persons that were on the city warning the people about destruction of Jerusalem.
So that's strange being.
Yeah.
If you read chapter 1 of the Great Controversy, there was a strange being who was moving around warning people that repent, etc. So you mark that strange being in 63.
Yes.
Do you have evidence for 63?
And she will say 7 years before the destruction.
Okay, good. So from 7 years here up to the destruction, so we are going to have 63 AD to 70. So we have this strange being. Don't know the name. So it was telling people, repent Jerusalem, because the destruction is very what? Is coming. So you can find it that description from here. So 7 years before the event. Okay. Let me just read. Earlier before I asked myself, when was the gospel written? And I want us to read this book, Signs of the Times by A.T. Jones. SITI, January 8, the year 1885. And that is paragraph, think, confirm. This is paragraph 25. Yes, paragraph 20, page, not paragraph, but page 25. Page 25, paragraph 8. So when you look at Signs of the Times by A.T. Jones, those periodical, it's just like there was a woman or people who are extolling the first day of the week as the Sabbath, which is Sunday. And they were quoting Paul from the gospel saying that they were celebrating the first day of the week, was the lost day. But Paul tells them, you know, even the disciples were living in this history from that 4 AD to 70, but they were not quoting, or extolling the first day of the week as the Sabbath. I'm not going to read all, but I've given you a reference to just read. On this mistake, these facts, Matthew wrote in AD 61. So it's going to say the book of Matthew was written in which year? 61 AD, 30 years after the resurrection of Christ. Mark wrote about 63 AD, 32 years after. Luke wrote the Gospel and the Acts about 64 AD, that's 3 years after. Paul wrote 1 Corinthians AD 60, 30 years after, and John wrote the Gospel in AD 97, 66 years after. And every one of them called it the first day of the week. So A.T. Jones is going to tell us that most of the disciples, the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, found their fulfillment in this history. And providentially, when they were writing this gospel, they included Christ's prediction about the destruction of who? Jerusalem. At the same time, this strange being was giving a warning, right? So I want us now to go to the Gospels and something. So when Christ was giving this prediction, what is the issue? Sorry, and just so we have here, let's say Matthew, then we have Mark. So Mark wrote it in 63 AD. Then we have John, Matthew, Mark, Luke. Then we're going to have John. So, Joy, when you want to understand the destruction of Jerusalem, which chapter are we going in the book of Mark? Matthew 24. Matthew 24. Let's just say chapter 24. What about Mark? Where do you find the description of the destruction of Jerusalem, the book of Mark? Mark? Someone say 13. Yeah, Mark chapter 13. Luke 21. Chapter 21. John, has anyone confirmed? It's not there. So he wrote around here 16, he says 67.
John wrote 97.
97. Yes, and yes, John wrote the gospel 97 years before he was killed, right? Yeah, 97. That's according to 80 Jones. So let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Just reading small portion. Matthew 24 from verse 1 to 3. And before we read Matthew, there is something that's happening in chapter 23. So someone can read Matthew 23 verse 38. So if I read, it says, "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." So if you look at the framework of Matthew 23, we call it what? The judgment upon the leadership, Jerusalem. Instead of Jerusalem, we have much hypocrisy. You have rejected the gospel. You have not even accepted the appearance of Christ. Now I'm going to pronounce judgment that your house, and I'm leaving what? Your house completely. Your house is left unto you desolate. And when the controversy between Christ and the Jewish leadership began, so you can have something like this one, Matthew chapter 5. So in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 to 28, what is the issue? Yes, the issue about adultery. So we have Israel, and then we have who? Christ. And then we have who? The third party? Rome. So who is Israel? So now present discussion. Based on this chapter, Israel will be who? So who is Christ accusing? The woman or the man? The man. So it's changing what was written where? In the Old Testament. So if Israel is the man, then who will be Christ here? The woman. Good woman. And then Rome, third party. So who is Israel? Why is Christ having a problem with Israel? Because Israel is quoting who? Rome. In many things in ideology, Israel was just living like who? Rome. Because when Christ came, what were they expecting? To be like Rome, a king, to be like a state. So they were just imbibing the same thing the Romans were doing what? Were doing. They were not living in the simplicity of the gospel. So prophetically, Israel is the man, and Christ is accusing them. He's quoting who? It's lasting after Rome. You get that? So this is the problem. By the time we come to Matthew 23, Matthew chapter 23, verse 38, it's all and done. Christ is telling them, your house is left unto you what? Desolate. And I'm going to give a prediction of your judgment. So let's get to Matthew 24, verse 1 and 3. I want us to pick something here. And then we'll compare with that. You see the idea that God was saying about someone being conscious. Conscious, like you are aware of your situation, what is going on, how do you write things, So let's go to chapter 24. So this concept of adultery in regard to the destruction of Jerusalem, and also we'll see the concept of adultery in regard to the war and the retribution. So let's get to Matthew chapter 24, verse 1 to 3. Join me.
And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them,
Do you not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?
Good, thank you. So I'm not going to pick, I know there's been some studies regarding Matthew 24. And so here we are told in chapter 23, Christ is saying, your house is left until desolate. Chapter 24 is going now to tell the judgment that is coming. And it says that his disciples, so Joy, when he says, and his disciples, how many disciples were there?
4.
4. Listen what you read. But if you read this chapter here, don't bring your knowledge. Now, this chapter, as you read it, how does it sound? And his disciples came to him.
Sounds like all of them.
All of them, right? So all of them came to ask Christ about the destruction of the temple. And then it says, verse 3, again, those disciples came to him. So as the Paul is writing, Matthew, was he lazy or what was he even doing? It's just saying his disciples came. It's not saying like the number of disciples that came to ask Christ. It's just generalizing. His disciples came to him. Okay, let's get to Mark chapter 13. We see how now Mark is approaching the subject. Mark 13, verse 1 to 4. It says, and as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said, Master, see what manner of those of stones and what buildings are here. So you see now the difference between Matthew and Mark. So according to Matthew, he says his disciples in plural. But here Mark is saying what? One of his disciples. Is there a problem there? Because Matthew is saying there were many who asked. And Mark here is saying is one disciple. And Jesus answered and said unto him, seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately. Now, we have number one here, just one disciple, but that one disciple just, he showed Christ what will happen, but he just sat down. We don't know who's there everything. But to be more inquisitive, how many disciples came to Christ? 4. 4 disciples. So 4 disciples, they were more inquisitive and asked Christ, please tell us what you meant privately. All right, so let's get to Luke chapter 21. It says, and he looked up and saw Luke chapter 21, verse 5. And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with gold stones and gifts, he said, as for these things came. And verse 7, and they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be, and what sign there be when these things shall come to pass? So you see also Luke is generalizing. He's saying some of disciples and some also asking, but one person for the disciples who is going now to dig deep to understand the questioner and those who went forward to ask more questions is Mark. So Mark, I can say, based on Miller's rule, things don't just happen in a vacuum. There are reasons. And when the Bible comes out clearly in that manner, we should not take it for granted. Because in the old study back in 2017, we used to say Christ is what? Harmonic, right? A wonderful number. So when God introduces number, we should be careful to investigate them. Why is God introducing numbers in narrative? So Mark, he did not follow the steps of other disciples. For him, he says, it is not some, it is not his disciples, it is one disciple that came to ask Christ to show him the beauty of what? The temple. And then later on, he repeated and enlarged and said, what? Is how many disciples that came to Christ to inquire for? It's 4 disciples. And we know what number 4 means to us. Is that true? So number 4, John,
Progression.
progression, instruction based on the book of Joel. So what I'm saying, in this period here, in the interest of knowledge, number 4 was intimately connected with the destruction of what? Jerusalem. And this is what the midnight cry came to do to us. The midnight cry message came to tell us that we should not, just push things anyhow. We should just consider, take time, and consider even the number of people that are where in the Bible. And based on the testimony of Acts 27, we have here Acts 27, verse 38. It gives us how many, which number? 217. So Acts 28, it tells us that how many people in the boat? 276. Now, what the midnight cry message did, it subtracted how many number here? 3. We remain with 273. It removed Paul, Luke, and what was his name? Aristarchus, and remain with this one. And what we did with this number, we went into history and said what? It took us to 273. And 273 had nothing to do with the story of Paul. It's just an ancient history. And this number, we went to the Bible and realized that's the number of who? The Levites. And by providence, this year, which was 272, and this is 275, 272. Here we have 217. What we have been discussing in the previous dispensation. So you can see that by taking the number of people and converting them, it takes us into history and we begin to see their significance. So if we come to the book of Matthew and we see the number 4, we know number 4 is the symbol of what? Also, destruction. So in this context, destruction, because we are discussing what the destruction of Jerusalem. And I'm saying now, because if we have Jerusalem, then we have what? The 1. So this number, these two entities, they are connected with what? Number 4. We have to see, because naturally the destruction of Jerusalem was connected with number 4. And I'm saying, suggesting, if you are going to see the destruction of the world, it has to be connected with which number? Number 4. And we have to showcase that. So who is going to bring the destruction of the world based on this dispensation here? Because this is where we get number 4. What about here? So I'm suggesting these 4 disciples, based on the testimony of Mark, they are the one who are more inquisitive to know about the destruction of God, Jerusalem. And with that number, if we come to a dispensation, there is an entity which is as a symbol of number 4 that is going to bring the destruction of what? Of the world. Is that okay? So by now, I think we can guess where we are heading to. Is Trump a symbol of number 4? Yeah? God, is Trump a symbol of number 4? Who is going to bring the end of the world, the destruction of the world? So what I'm thinking, or from where I see it, I'm picking this line. We have the line of the president. So we are going to have, who is this person? President Reagan. Reagan. Then we are going to have Bush. Then after Bush, we are going to have the administration of who? Clinton. Bill. And then we're going to have the administration of who? Bush Jr. Then we are going to have Obama, right? Then we are going to have the fourth one is Trump. So this is one, two, three.
It should be one.
Yeah. How did I write it?
That's transition. If you're listening from Daniel 11,
Oh yeah.
it can
Okay. So based on this Daniel 11, I'm sorry, I forgot to give a reference. So based on Daniel 11, it says, three more kings shall rise after thee, right? So who is you? So you can put this one as what? You, right? Is that okay, Sabine?
yes.
So after you, there shall be what?
Three more.
Three more. So we are going to have Bill as the first one, and then Bush is all. Second, Obama to be the third. Then this is the study that was done, I think 2016. See there? So, and we know now, right now, as we are discussing a lot of things, Trump has become very significant in our structure. Regarding the destruction of Jerusalem, it was connected the subject of what? Adultery. Your house is left until desolate, and I'm going now to give a prediction of what? Of your destruction. When you come to this dispensation, it's the same thing that we are discussing, Revelation 17. And if in this dispensation you are having the conquering of Egypt, so this one here, I'm saying, is what? Egypt. We're going to have something. Okay. So we have this structure here. We have 64. Then we have 16. 3. Then we have what? Is it when was Egypt conquered? Battle of Actium? No, not sure. Then Rome was given a 360 period to rule up to 3. That's AD. 60 years. So here we have Syria. Then we have glorious land. Then Egypt. So here we have this one you can mark as what? Soviet Union. Then this one is what? United States. Then this one is the one. Start okay. Start the correct model. So what I was saying, based on these two chapters, and you can read this quotation. Even Ellen White is going to emphasize the idea of number 4 here. I think we can read that quotation for the last time.
So if you read that one,
Yeah.
I just want clarification on the number 4.
Okay.
So we talked about number 4
Yes.
as a simple destruction of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Which you have seen that we need to look at it from the lens of the world each year. So you say now bringing Daniel 11 to you have come as the first as a symbol of destruction of the world.
Yeah.
I thought like this model will bring the destruction of the glorious land and not the world.
Okay. So your concern, instead of saying that Trump is a symbol of destruction of the world,
Let's go number 4.
yeah, number 4 means the destruction of
Glorious land.
glorious land. I agree with that. However, what do you think the adultery, the institution now based on because if you go to Revelation 17, we have the kings without crown. You think also Trump will influence the world?
But not using this model, this number 4.
Yes, we agree. That number 4 is a destruction of Jerusalem. Now my question is, Egypt, who is going to take Egypt? Like to dismantle the institution of Egypt?
I know it's Trump.
Yes, you know it's Trump, and Trump is who? Number 4, right? And his ideology is going to destroy the institution of the glorious land. By extension, what brings the end of the world? By bit and large.
It's Trump, but I don't know. You
I'm,
can
I'm, I'm,
continue.
try, I'm, okay, I'm trying to get your difficulty and complexity right then. But for me, where I stand, I'm saying this one. Like, yes, Trump is bringing the destruction of glorious land, the institution, and that's so based on 2024. But other models tells you that he shall also stretch his hand wide upon the countries. And that's what I call a repeat and enlarge. And that enlargement is connected with what? Number 4. And by virtue of that, that's the reason why I'm extending that Trump is also bringing the end of the world. And because it's number 4, I'm just connecting into it the future. But if there was an entity which was to bring the end of the world, then this model would be null and void. But if Egypt is connected with Trump, then Trump, that number 4 has to be connected to Egypt. Because he's the one who is initiating that problem.
You know where my difficulty is?
Yeah, yes.
Now, we have taken number 4 as the symbol of destruction.
Yes, yes.
And you are specific to the world. Yeah. And when I take that symbol, I see it's a destruction of the glorious land.
And
So
Sabina,
I'm not denying the other models which can show the destruction of the world.
can I say that on a simple level, it's glorious land? That number on a simple level is glorious land. But to be complex, now you try to zoom in to understand the concept about Egypt. It's still Trump. Because that's what Daniel 11 verse 21 is telling us. So for me, I think you are on a simple level, just like this is what the Bible is saying, not me. The Bible says like that number 4 is bringing the end of Jerusalem. The number 4 is bringing the end of the world. Glorious land. It's true. But on the complex side, it is Trump who is also been dismantling of the world at the same time. That's why I'm connecting 4 in the world. So I appreciate that. So I think time is over, Jobs. Yeah. I have 7 minutes. Okay, I want us to read this quotation. 628. I can just read. I'm not going to read all of it. Christ's words had been spoken in the hearing of a large number of people. But when he was alone, Peter, John, James, and Andrew came to him as he sat upon the Mount of Olives. So what Ellen White is saying, that those words were given to many people. People could hear, like, yes, I'm giving a prediction of the destruction of Jerusalem. But it did not disturb their hearts. It's only 4 people who came to inquire more. Please tell us, what did you say? And when God is giving that number we should not take it for granted. Just the same way we are doing with Acts 27, and we saw that it indeed, help us to understand, difficult thoughts. Understanding the king of the south, their fulfillment, their time. And when I went through that quotation, I saw like, okay, if it's the 4 disciples in 63 AD that they were going to listen about Christ's works in regard to the destruction of Jerusalem, then in this dispensation, we really need to have to see the idea of what? Number 4, in regard to the destruction of what? Of the world. Because verse 41, as Sabina is saying, verse 41, we can't disconnect verse 41 and 42. The same entity that brought problem here, same thing that's going to bring problem where? In verse 42. And that's why I'm saying Trump is a symbol, just like the 4 disciples who were actually inquiring about the destruction of Jerusalem, that it's this person, the number 4, is going to connect the destruction of what? Of the world. Because even glorious land, is it part of the world? Technically, is glorious land part of the world? It is, right? But the reason why the Bible is disconnecting glorious land in the world is to show us where the problem does what? Begins, where it starts from, okay? And based on this model, can we just fight again that we have this idea about the man, the woman, and the third party based on Revelation 17? So Revelation 17 tells us we have the head, the woman, and
Yes.
the beast. So this is the concept of adoption. So as of now, I think all of us have gone through the presentations. So who is the head based on Revelation 17? We know the purpose is no longer like a subject of prophecy, and it's not bad because the majority of those people will just pass the test of the last commandment. The subject of prophecy is the seventh kingdom, which is the United States of America. And one of the models that tells us that, I think, is the third adoptive, where we have Antigonus, after he won the battle of what? Gabini, he killed one of his generals, that is Python. That Python is a symbol of water. The purpose, he betrayed them, and then Antigonus just went forward to do his own thing. The same way in 1989, the papacy in the United States united together to conquer Soviet Union. And after that happened, the United States hijacked the role of the papacy. That's what the papacy is no longer a very big subject of prophecy today. So who's the head based on the Revelation 17? A political entity with what? With power. So where's the woman sitting? Is it on the head or just over the beast?
The woman.
Sitting on the
The head.
beast. Yes? The woman is dead.
It depends on which part you are looking at. As now you will tell you the head.
Now, what I'm saying, where's the woman sitting? Sitting upon the beast. Okay. So you're saying woman equal to the head?
No.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yes.
the combination of the head and the woman is the
Can you separate the head from the beast? Yeah? Can you separate the head from the beast? We know how many head does that beast have? It's one, just one head, naturally, right? Concordant. Naturally, can you separate your head from your body?
Naturally, no.
You can't separate. So the head is a political entity with what power? The beast is a political entity which has subscribed to the ideology of who? The woman, okay? And who is the woman? Based on understanding. That is controlling the beast with its ideology. It's Trump. And Trump is not the problem. Trump is what? The symptom of a larger society that is now portraying the ideology of what the society does what wants. Now, those 10 kings, this beast has how many horns? 10 horns, okay? Those horns have a crown. It doesn't have a crown. What does that symbolize? They don't have what?
No power.
Power. So where is that power? Just being vested upon who?
No.
The ideology, the woman. So because the kings of the earth, they can't do anything. The woman has just, deprived them of that authority. And that's what I'm saying. Like those 10 horns without crown is a symbol of the world where like they are just massless. They can't do anything. They can't stand in the way of this ideology. Once this woman controls the beast and the beast subscribes to the ideology of the woman, they can't do anything. The kings don't have the crowns. The horns don't have power to fight back. And that's how Egypt is being conquered. And because of the sin of the world, it becomes null and void to function. By the time we come to 70 AD, the first of probation, what we have? We have to figure out how does the destruction looks like. Because this was just natural. But how does the destruction look at the cross of probation? So, in conclusion, what I wanted us to see is the destruction of Jerusalem in connection with what? Number 4. And that number 4 is a symbol of who? Donald Trump, in connection also to the destruction of what? Of the world, which begins from glorious land, technically. I think we'll have a Q&A session with us. Okay, let's go. Holy God in heaven, we thank you for the time that you've given us here. We thank you for the thoughts that you have shared amongst ourselves. Even though difficult, we have another time to continue our studying and asking ourselves questions because we know you are very patient to us. Help us also to be patient with one another, reasonable, and will give us clarity of thoughts. We thank you for this far you have brought us from 1999 to present, how you have molded this movement to be in line with your worldview. And we also pray for those who are struggling to know what the world looks like. This may be with them. Guide us is our prayer in Jesus' name.
Amen.